You might not know me, and honestly, that is absolutely fine. If you're looking for literally the one-stop video, I should say, for DMA, this is where you're going to get it. I have put in countless hours of time in terms of working with software providers, testing their software, also ordering straight from China, the motherland, a DMA card, not paying overpriced reseller prices of these cards that are being drop shipped around the world. I just want to say before I go into this, I know I'm going to get targeted by some DMA cheating communities. My goal is not to popularize DMA to the point where everyone's using it to where it no longer feels special and it hurts your fucking feelings. I'm going to explain to you today what a DMA is, how it works, where to get it, where the prices are the best, what to look out for when buying firmware, and on top of that, just fill you in on some general basic questions because I'm really sick of the gatekeeping in the DMA community. Although I personally have not experienced it with any of the communities I've joined, everyone's been pretty great. I don't know if that's because I have a YouTube channel with 70,000 subs, and I generally hope that isn't the reason why I got treated so nicely by everyone. But at the end of the day, I really want to just blow the lid off it, explain it, and honestly, there is a pretty hefty price pool when it comes to getting everything, especially if you plan to cheat and face it. We're going to hop into it, explain a whole bunch of stuff. So strap in, grab your popcorn, and again, my name's Tabz, and welcome back for another video.
Hard drive loaded up, lunch double and coated wood. Sip up all your drinks.
Before we go further into the video, I just want to say, I want to give a huge shout out real quick to TG Mods. They sponsored this video by helping me purchase some stuff for the PC build so that we didn't have to go outright, because this project did cost just over 2,500 Canadian dollars or about 1,900 USD for absolutely everything so that I could get my hands on everything and have the, you know, whatever production quality we ended up having. You guys have really wanted this. You guys even helped fund the purchase of the DMA card. You guys paid for about half of it. And then I paid for everything else alongside with TG Mods. And I just want to say, if you guys aren't DMA users, check out TG Mods for literally anything that they sell. If you guys are looking for a good discount on internal and external cheats for multiple different games, I would highly recommend using code TABS on checkout to save some money. And also, thank you so much to TG Mods for just sponsoring this video, making sure that I was able to get everything I needed to be able to upload this awesome content for my viewers. Anyways, thank you so much. Much love once again, man. Please, guys, go check out TG. Let him know that I sent you. This video would not be possible without him. I don't think I could say that word on YouTube, but I don't like spending money.
Warning. The video you are about to watch is intended exclusively for learning and educational purposes. Any links to stores mentioned in the video are provided solely for contextual reference, indicating where the products used in the video were purchased. We want to emphasize that this content falls under the Fair Use Act, safeguarding its educational nature from copyright infringement claims. However, as the creator, TabzWare does not endorse or recommend replicating any actions demonstrated in the video. Any attempts to repeat these actions are undertaken at the viewer's own discretion and risk. We urge viewers to exercise caution and use their best judgment when dealing with similar tasks. It is crucial to understand that any outcomes of replicating actions shown in the video are solely the responsibility of the viewer.
So what is exactly a DMA card, and what exactly does direct memory access allow us to do? Well, a DMA card is essentially a custom-made card with an FPGA chip in it, and that FPGA stands for Field Programmable Array. And what this chip is designed to do is make data transfers without involving the CPU. Its original build was by Intel in, I believe, 1986, and it was in the original IBM computer. Now, these aren't the exact same as the ones that we use today, but again, it still holds true that it is built to do data transfers without involving the CPU, making it less stressful on hardware. Where it's taken advantage of in DMA is it's used to access game memory without involving the CPU, and in the CPU is generally where your anti-cheat is running. And again, remember that in normal research and development, it is really just used for data transfer, so it's kind of funny how that is being exploited now. So clearly for this video's purpose, this card is being exploited and it's being used to bypass the CPU's involvement with relation to the anti-cheat. To put it simply, we're going to be using a DMA card to avoid involvement of the CPU at all costs when it comes to accessing the game's memory. That's super important because every cheat pretty much functions based on game memory, and you're going to want to be able to modify and manipulate game memory for the cheat functions to work, such as silent aim. But for a better explanation on why keeping the CPU out of this entire crossroad is so good is because of this. There are 4 common ways an anti-cheat is going to use your computer and its main processing cores, aka your CPU, to defend the game that it's running. So let's break down these 4 methods. These are the 4 general defensive methods that a anti-cheat is going to do. whilst having access to your CPU. Generally, we're going to see process monitoring as one example, as well as memory scanning. We're going to do game behavior analysis breakdowns, and we're going to look for system calls and API hooks. To explain process monitoring, an anti-cheat system will monitor a process running on the CPU, checking for any suspicious or deemed malicious application that might interfere with the game in any way and feels as if it's a threat to its integrity. And that's the basics of process monitoring. When it comes to memory scanning, it sounds exactly like what it is. The anti-cheat is going to use memory scanning to look through the memory of the game to make sure that there is no injected cheats or modified altered code. While doing this, it's basically just doing an integrity check to make sure that everything is as it should be and you haven't defiled the code. Or the memory in that case. For number 3, we're going to be talking about game behavior, and this one is a little bit different because it's going to be different for every game based on server checks. An anti-cheat will analyze the behavior of programs running on the CPU, and they'll typically look for a pattern that seems to be clear signs of cheating. Now, a good example of this would be very fast, unnatural, and unhuman changes to stats of a character, for example, such as running your entire stamina bar down, but as soon as it gets to 10%, it's all the way back at 100, or having unlimited ammo in your gun, or even just having an automatic heal where as soon as you're at a certain level of health, your health magically just shoots back up to 100 because you've modified memory. This also includes lowering the rate at which your character uses stamina, for example, or even in games where you get to swim and hold your breath, making it so that your breath doesn't ever run out. It is important to note here that some of the behavioral factors is what is known as server side, and these aren't going to be able to be bypassed on your local machine. And the chances are that 99.9% of the time, unless a new method is found and that current one you're using is detected, you will still get banned DMA or not. The final and the most common defense, I'm going to use EFT as an example in this one. It's going to be the API hooks and system calls. So an anti-cheat will use hooks into system calls and API to track and try and control interactions between the game and your OS, also known as your operating system. This helps the anti-cheat spot and prevent certain types of cheating. An example of this, like I said, would be Escape from Tarkov. As you guys know, when you guys have ESP and Escape from Tarkov, if you've ever cheated in that game, everybody uses item value so they know what to grab in the raid. This might not be as common now that vacuum looting is a thing, but I'm sure that will get patched very soon. At the end of the day, a lot of cheats used to do something called an API call. They would call .search market, and what it would do is pull the market values for all the items on the map that you're currently loaded into, and from there give you and display the current market value so that you could take them. Now, this got detected a little while ago, and there is a new method now that basically uses dummy accounts that have the game and that are already leveled up to a certain level that have access to market in some cases, or just straight calling it from the game on a dummy account. Will then upload that to a server and then give it to you on your client side through the cheat program. So you can pretty much bypass that now, but that was just an example for EFT. So now that we've gotten you caught up on basically the anti-cheat basics and why a DMA card is useful for avoiding the CPU in the entire process of reading and writing memory, let's talk a little bit more about DMA and firmware, the DMA card itself and the firmware. The firmware being the most important part. It doesn't matter what DMA you buy at the end of the day. The firmware is what's going to keep you safe from being banned by anti-cheats. What I mean by that and the seriousness of that is if you do not have a decent firmware on your DMA and you plug it in, it's as simple as starting a game and getting banned immediately because you've already had that pre-flash firmware in a database pretty much showing that you're a cheater. And yeah, that's right. You can literally just have your DMA card sitting in your computer, launch Valorant, not even have a cheat injected, and immediately get banned just because you're flagged. You have something that's already detected just sitting in your device manager. Even if you can't see it and the firmware is at least good enough to hide it from device manager, you can still get tapped. So if you've never actually seen a DMA up close, I'm going to play some footage of my DMA actually getting delivered to me, and we can go over that. That was about a week ago from the day I'm recording this video, and there is some things that I am going to cut out just because at the time I myself was not educated enough to make the exact right calls that I should have, but I'm going to still show you exactly what the hardware looks like. And on top of that, we will get into more about firmware.
All right, so this is what you're going to get straight from mainland China. So you're wondering about the glove. It's just because I'm not sure if the heatsink comes attached, and I do not want any kind of grease getting on the chipset, making it harder for me to install the heatsink, as some of these do not come with a heatsink pre-installed. So let's cut this bad boy open here. $5 guaranteed, up to 100% of shipping cost. And yes, I used sugar goo when it came to ordering this because, well, it's just what I preferred. So first little opening section here, we've got our KM Box Net, I believe. Yep, we got a KM Box Net. I did order a KM Box Pro, and that's what will be linked down below. But they gave me the Net version, which is the upgraded version that comes with a screen no matter what. As the KM Box B doesn't have a screen, the KM Box B Pro does have a screen. There we go. We got the KM Box. This is what's going to do our mouse emulation. And that's going to be the Captain DMA. So open this up. Got our PCIe mounting bracket. Got our USB-A to USB-C cable braided, pretty nice. And the piece de resistance. And we got our heat shield here. We have to install that. And we have our tiny little DMA and our USB for that as well. Move all this out of the way. There we go. So we've talked about this in the video, I believe already. This is the Atrix 7 chip. Now this is the Captain DMA. This is the version 4. So if I spin this around here and we look, we have USB-C. And this specific Atrix 7 chip is a Atrix 7A35T. So you can see that it's pretty much being named off of probably the next generation board, and we can see PCIe, Captain DMA, anything is possible. So you'll notice on the Captain DMA, I guess base plate, back plate, heat sink, whatever you want to call it, we do have a strip here of pretty much see-through plastic, and that's what's going to light up green when you install this into your computer. I'm going to grab our automatic screwdriver here, because we're going to give ourselves the perfect amount of torque for this install. Your Captain DMA. Nice looking card. We're going to get this bad boy installed, and we should be flying colors from here on out. You've made it past the only hard part once it gets delivered. Now we just got to make sure that the firmware that it says it comes with, that is supposed to be one-to-one, is truly one-to-one by testing it in some games. Let's get into it. We're going to turn off the power to our power supply. And obviously another good step, especially if you are a computer guy, you know, you kind of want to disperse anything. Just hit your power button a few times. As you can see, I have some slots under there, but it's probably not going to be the easiest to get this into there. There we go. We've got that installed. Now we just want to take a screw that would be technically either with your case or your motherboard. You should have a couple extra of these screws. So you want to take one of those and simply just make sure that you lock this thing into place. Nice and hand tight, nothing more than that. Now, all you got to do is make sure that you give power back to your computer and start up your PC. Now, it should light up if it's been installed correctly. I do believe you do have to run the included software really quickly that came with it, but it will light up if the use case for it is working, and that is the PC build. I definitely need to get a new case. You guys let me know what case to get. Our DMA PC looks much better for 1/4 the price. From what I can see, that's installed correctly. I'm not seeing any issues there. So if you are indeed doing your setup quite like mine, you're going to be wanting to go to settings and go to search. You can type in VT, hit enter, and you can see VTD is disabled. If this was enabled, you would just disable it, go over to save and exit setup. Yes. From there, your computer will full reboot and we can get back into what the main goal is. So before we can really truly go further, we do have to install the USB connection between the DMA and the cheating PC. So we're going to plug this in very quickly over here, and then I'm going to route this upwards and plug this into my DMA PC, just into a USB 3.1, 3.2 slot, just a fast PC slot. So with that plugged into the back as seen, we're going to simply turn on the DMA PC. We are now able to confirm that we have a stable connection. We've got that green wire lit up. If we go over after watching the tutorial on how to install these correctly, we're going to be looking for a specific device and device manager so that we can update right here. FTDI super speed, we're going to update driver. We're going to browse my computer for drivers, hit browse, go into our desktop, go into the driver installation tutorial, hit on our driver and hit OK and hit next. And as you can see, it's installed. So we're going to go on the driver, hit 64-bit, hit Windows 10 and hit OK.
We're then going to hit next and then see that it is installed successfully. So now we have an FTDI FT60 USB 3.0 bridge device on our actual main DMA PC. This is not going to be our gaming PC. And it's done. And then simply go over to EN, go to DMA test, and we're going to use this to test really quick. So we're going to go DMA test application. Looks like everything is good.
So to give you a little bit of a rundown on firmware, the firmware is what's going to relay back to your PC and to the anti-cheat software running at the time what the device is via its ID/firmware/purpose. And when you aren't running an altered firmware, your DMA will literally show up in the device manager as exactly what it is: direct memory access controller. That's pretty much just what it shows up as when you plug it in if you have no firmware. Like no custom firmware, nothing like that. That's not what you want an anti-cheat to see, and that's why this can get a little confusing for some people. Another heavily overlooked factor when it does come to a custom firmware is the fact that your firmware doesn't only have to be custom, it actually does have to emulate a real PCI Express card. It doesn't matter if that's a network controller, it doesn't matter if that's a USB hub. At the end of the day, it has to emulate something real. To give you a decent example of this would be if you were to start Valorant and have the Vanguard kernel or VGK running when you start Valorant, if it sees that your card is a network card and then sends a TPL request to it and it doesn't get a response back or even an error back, you're fucked. Like you're immediately flagged. There's really not much you can do. And that's why firmware is so overlooked, because there's so much more behind it that people don't realize. That being said, I mean, EAC and BE for many years literally didn't realize DMA was a thing. Surprisingly, BattlEye was one of the first anti-cheats to actually detect DMA and actually start doing bans. But there's like, if anything tells you anything, I mean, EFT has had BattlEye for what, 2-3 years now, and DMA's been UD on it for like a very long time, with very rare bans from BE coming to DMA. Usually from pooled firmwares, you'll see a lot of BE bans. And we'll talk about pooled firmwares in a second. I'm getting ahead of myself. So again, like being said, that is a larger purchase when you do get your DMA. If you're buying a cheap DMA card, you are going to have to get good firmware. Generally, if you get them both together, they are a little pricey. But hey, if you're only interested in EAC and BE games, the one I'm going to show you is cheaper than 150 bucks. So to explain firmware a little bit easier, there's going to be two groups of users. We're going to have pool firmware users, which are 2, 5, 10, 20 people all using the same firmware on their DMA card. And then you're going to have one-to-one users, or supposed one-to-ones, as we've seen a lot of these shitty companies just mass produce one-to-ones. And basically in a firmware code, there's your top level of code, your middle level of code, and your bottom level of code. Usually for EAC and BE, the top and bottom are all that matter. So if those are different from everybody else, you're pretty much good to go. The center portion of code is what matters for games and anti-cheats that go a little bit further, such as Vanguard. In the middle section is where you're going to find basically your default serial number and your default firmware number in the firmware. And if those are unchanged, you'll get a pop-up. One of the cheat providers that I used recently was Atomic, and Atomic will let you know in their benchmark if you have shit firmware. I personally found out that the card I bought was only good for EAC and BE because of this, but I did find a provider that did offer a Valorant firmware. So if I decide to ever do that, which I have no plans to, I now know where to get firmware that works for Valorant. So what are the ups and downs of pooled firmware? Well, the ups, much cheaper. You can usually find it in my notes here from doing all this research. You can find pooled firmware for as cheap as $25 to $85, sometimes around the 50 mark, depending on who you go to. And on top of that, you get to save a couple bucks for some cheat subs, and some people will even give you a free cheat sub for your DMA if you buy firmware through them. But that's pretty much the only pros. Everything else is cons. It really does just take one dickhead to absolutely set off a fucking 1,000 red flags for an anti-cheat, for them to look a little bit closer into it, ban the firmware once they feel that they have enough proof you're a cheater, and then everybody in that pool is then banned with that anti-cheat running, even if they aren't cheating in that game and their DMA is simply just installed. Now you see why pooled firmware is generally a no-go, but for games that are EAC and BE, you might just get lucky, who knows? So the pros and cons of one-to-one firmware. Cons, it's very hard to determine whether your one-to-one firmware is truly one-to-one without comparing it to another person that's bought firmware from the same provider. That being said, one of the cons is going to be price. So most people are going to charge you about $100 to $125 for a private firmware for simple EAC and BE. And then you'll have about 150 to 175 for BE, EAC, and VGK or Vanguard's kernel anti-cheat. And then you'll have people that will sell you, hold on to this, $500, $300 to $500. I've seen $600 actually from DMA Kingdom. $300 to $600 to cheat and face it is fucking ridiculous. So those are generally the pros and cons when it comes to firmware. You decide what you want to cheat in. And honestly, a lot of the times, if you're just wanting to cheat in EAC and BE games, you can just buy a 1-to-1 pre-flash firmware with your card from a decent provider such as Captain DMA. I do want to preface that if you are going to be spending money on a DMA to play CS2, like just matchmaking, and you don't have a super crazy expensive inventory, that it's so overkill that you're stupid. Maybe in the future when externals and internals are getting fucked over by VAC again, sure. But if you're using this in MM at this current state, you're crazy. So I want to get into the DMA requirements. And for this portion of this video, you guys will be watching me build my DMA PC. Now, I do want to say that this build that I'm making in the background is not just for DMA. I'm not that crazy. I'm not spending this much money to just use it as a DMA PC. This video is also being used as a recording and encoding PC so that I'm able to take less stress off my main build when I want to record games such as DayZ. It also allows me to use a capture card to record the ESP on top of the game because, and this is going to shock some people that aren't aware, ESP does not render on your local machine unless it's inbuilt memory, chams, and ESP and outline, stuff like that. Basic boxes and rendering around, if it's not already in-game memory as a feature, is going to have to be rendered on an overlay and then viewed on another device. So getting into this really quickly, all I want to say is you're going to need another computer. This is very simple. Honestly, you don't need something crazy. In the description down below, I'm actually going to have a link to a Google Doc that you guys can go to because I already have a pre-built there, as well as a couple pre-built little mini PCs you guys can pick up from Taobao for super cheap that 100% work because they were literally made for this exact application. I should also note that if you do want to copy my build, you're going to need a decent GPU. I am only using a 4060 in this build simply because the build that I'm building, I wanted to make sure I got to test every single way to stream ESP to my game PC. So I wanted to use it for something we'll talk about in a little bit. But if you do not want to buy a fuser, which allows you to use ESP on your computer, just like you would with an external or an internal cheat on a single gaming PC, I would definitely look into possibly using the Moonlight API, which we'll talk about soon. And we'll also talk about some other methods of doing that if you are an AMD user, as Moonlight is only for NVIDIA. So to put it simply, there's very little info online about the appropriate minimums for a DMA PC spec-wise, but we can use common sense to determine a good budget build and purchase for this use case. Take note, for good interaction speeds, your PC should have a USB 3.0 or higher when it comes to your build for your motherboard so that your DMA can interact with your DMA PC. The average quad-core processor of say 3.5 gigahertz, as long as it has AVX2 support, should be able to keep up fine with Windows 10, and that's the lowest OS usually supported by most softwares for DMA. We also want an APU or iGPU or GPU with the equivalent of a GTX 1050 in power. You can generally find these for about $50 to $65 used on eBay. It's also important to factor in resolution, as if your card is too old, you won't be able to render ESP at your gaming computer's resolution correctly. I actually had a friend named Marshall try this out. His GPU was too old to render 1440p. His ESP just wouldn't work, and he had to go out and buy another GPU. So it's really, honestly, it's very rare in the use case that this will happen. But he was using like a GT 550. Don't ask. I want to say though, if you feel that you are going to run games that require a lot of ESP and detailed radar with tons of loot and players, I would bite the bullet and get a tad more expensive GPU. We're talking about like a GT 1070. These are about $80 to $110 on eBay, but again, it's not that much when you consider you're spending more on the DMA card itself. For decent ESP render performance, as from personal experience, the radar alone that's super detailed can use up to 40% of my modern 4060. Take this with a grain of salt though, as many features and the way your software is actually coded will bog you down to a certain extent, especially ESP wise when it comes to rendering. These DMA cards render data differently to other cheats, and the way something is written makes literally all the difference in performance. If you're a basic cheater who only wants chams and aim, then a simple $180 to $250 mini PC is all you're going to need from basically Amazon or Taobao. Like I said, I will have a cost-effective PC down below if you just want to hand build one, you have spare parts. But again, I will also make sure that you guys have some pre-built options. These two options for builds are going to be basically used. I'm just using Tarkov as an example here, but you're going to be looking at something like an AMD Ryzen 5 4500 3.6 gigahertz 6-core processor that includes the CPU cooler for about $79 US. On top of that, you'll be getting about 8 gigs of RAM DDR4 at 3200 megahertz. It'll cost you 25 bucks. And then again, like we said, GPU GTX 1060 or equivalent is going to cost you about 50 to 80 bucks. You're looking pretty cheap there. And again, your motherboard, PSU, storage, etc. do not affect DMA performance. Your motherboard obviously might, but given the day and age, if your motherboard at least has a 3.0 slot, you will be absolutely fine. So you can still go with the cheapest of cheap as long as you have a 3.0 motherboard. And again, everything that I've noted here, like I said, will be in the document. I have it all saved here so that I can make sure that you guys see it. We have 3 pre-built options. We have the Robo Mini console. It's rocking an AMD Ryzen 4700U, so it's got an iGPU in it already. It's $175.88 USD from Taobao, so that does not include shipping. We also have the Mechanic Mini Host Ryzen R7 4800H. The higher performance version of this pocket PC will cost you about $210 US. Again, none of these are going to include shipping because I can't determine where you live. And then if you absolutely just want to ball out on a dope mini PC, you can look at the mini console AMD Ryzen 5900 HX ES mini PC. That will go for about $240 US. Again, not including shipping, but you can expect shipping on something like that because it is still a mini PC going based on weight, usually depending on how fast you want it. Expect the fastest available shipping worldwide to cost you no more than $110 US, unless your import fees suck. I'm Canadian. I know what that's like. Anything over $20, I have to pay fees on.
To put this a little bit simpler, because my camera just died, I want to show you guys exactly how DMA is going to work in terms of computer interaction. So let me do something really quick. The marker was in my pocket. I'm stupid. We have our main PC here. We have our DMA card, and we have our secondary computer here. All right. Very simple. So main, DMA, second. The DMA card is going to be installed here. So this is step 1. Step 2 is a USB is going to be going into the DMA cheating PC. From here, you're simply going to have the game memory go through here into the DMA. It will then send that information to PC number 2. This PC will modify the memory, send it back to the DMA. The DMA will then tell that information to the main PC. Voila, Bob's your uncle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Main computer, DMA, secondary DMA PC. Not that hard to fucking understand, really. This thing controls everything. This is the main piece of the pie. I don't think I did a very great job explaining, but just go back and rewatch it. I think that was good enough. I mean, I don't want to steal someone else's graphic, and it was either do it myself or steal someone's graphic, so screw it. We did it that way.
Just because I know some people are visual learners, I will pull out the bad boy like we just did with the whiteboard more often, just so that I can literally show you a visual representation, because I know some people learn a little bit easier like that of shit that I'm going to be talking about. But anyways, you guys should understand how it goes now. Kind of not hard to understand. One thing interacts with one thing tells the other thing, that thing tells this thing, fuck. So let's start talking about DMA cards. For memory reading and manipulation, including basic radar, and by the way, I mean radar on a second PC, not the gaming PC, you can comfortably use just a DMA card. And you can also do something that a lot of people overlook, and that's render in-game visuals such as chams if the game supports it. A couple games right off the bat that supported are EFT and Rust, also Counter-Strike. Glow also works in Apex Legends, which is pretty cool. And that means you don't need a fuser at all, especially because that game's pretty much PvP. And for some reason, Glow in Apex also shows you weapons and ammo. So literally all in one there. Apex seems to be a game that if you just literally have a DMA card with supported firmware, you need nothing else. So if you do want to render more than just glow and chams, you're going to need something called a fuser. And this is honestly where everything gets confusing as shit for most people. So again, we're just going to hop back to the whiteboard and explain the fuser quickly.
Now, if you had a fuser, we're going to say that this is your main PC. This is your DMA, where it doesn't really matter in this case. And then we have this. So this is main PC. This is going to be your fuser. This is going to be your second one. You're going to have the output from your computer go into the fuser. your output from this computer go into the fuser. Your display port is going to go to your main gaming monitor. It's going to take both of these, add them together, mix them up, and render your ESP boxes with your little player there. All right, that's how that works. You can avoid doing this because fusers are very, very fragile. They break hella easy. You can avoid all this by just buying a capture card like an Elgato, or in most cases, AverMedia is usually better. The AverMedia 4K Gamer Live has like, I think their preview is 0.2 or 0.5 millisecond delay, and it supports full 240 hertz pass through. I bought a fuser and that. I'll let you know in the future which one's better. I'll do like proper tests and shit like that. But very simple. And then if you bought a capture card, we're just going to do this. Capture card is going to go into the DMA PC. This is your main PC. So your HDMI or DP is going to go from your main computer into the capture card in the DMA computer. You're then going to use a monitor connected to the DMA computer to play the game. You're going to get all the info from this computer sent over to this monitor from the capture card, and the overlay of ESP on the DMA PC is going to render over that. So same as a fuser, not as fragile. A little bit more expensive by maybe $30, $40, but you also don't have to rely on some shit from Taobao breaking and then trying to communicate with someone that does not speak English without Google Translate.
So the DMA card that I purchased for this video cost me 133 USD. This might be a lot or a little confusing for some people because a lot of DMA cards you see being sold are actually resellers for the EU and NA just / Western market. And it's kind of nuts because the one that I bought, the DMA V4, sells for 133 USD with custom firmware from the factory I purchased from Taobao. And that's without shipping, obviously. And I don't want to step on any resellers' toes, but I've seen this thing sold for $299 with custom firmware and $50 shipping. So I could definitely see why everyone thinks DMA is much more expensive than it truly is, when you can buy a DMA for less than $140 and then just buy firmware after the fact if you really wanted to. Generally, pre-flashed firmware, such as the Captain DMA V4 that I got with pre-flashed firmware, does work on EAC and BE. But again, the middle part is not custom, meaning BE and EAC could definitely just tap it at some point, given the chance that they wanted to. So yes, it's custom, but at the same time, it's not like perfect custom. So there is a lot to note about other DMA options that are available. For example, we're going to be talking about a bunch of these. So you might have a hard time purchasing a DMA card because you don't know what to go with. There is tons of options and it is a little bit hard to kind of explain, but to make things easier, here's a couple versions of DMA cards you might have seen, heard of, or you're going to see 100%. So there's the Captain V4, the V3, and the V5, but there's also the Terminator P1, the Red Squirrel, the Screamer V2, the 75T. I probably lost you there, and honestly, at the end of the day, all these chips are using the same family of Atrix 7 FPGAs, and the price increase is generally not worth it unless, for example, you wanted to cheat in Valorant out of the box. I know that Captain definitely does support Valorant out of the box for the 75T variant of their DMA card. I don't know how long that's going to stay UD for, but out of the box, if you are paying the, I think like 30 or 40 extra dollars from the Taobao factory for that 75T, you will have EAC, BE, and Valorant, or VGK as it's known in the DMA community. You'll have firmware that will be absolutely fine for those. So unless you're really wanting to play Val, the only difference between all those cards is essentially their read and write speed, but they're all good enough to the point where it's not going to matter. So you're paying for like a newer chip that's going to produce the same, if not, you're paying for little extras like a power button. Just fucking unplug it from your computer. Unplug it from your computer. Don't play games that aren't supported. It's almost not worth it considering that the price difference for these, if you do have to purchase from a reseller, are hundreds of dollars in most cases. And again, if you do want to get a newer one for that faster memory transfer, there's almost going to be no difference in speed that you're going to notice unless the cheat that you're using is very poorly written and it relies more on the card as a brace to like basically just keep up with the sloppy code. But again, you can have not the newest card and compare it to the newest card. And generally, if you're using the exact same settings in a game that aren't overkill, you're not going to see a difference in read and write speeds in terms of what's needed to be able to run the cheat smoothly. Think of it as Jordans that come out that have like a higher quality lace, but it's not enough for you to buy the entirely new shoe. if that does that make sense? But anyways, we spoke about fusers and kind of how fusers worked. So to put it simply, we already went over the fact that the job of a fuser is to take two inputs, your main PC that you're going to be gaming on, and a secondary screen that you're going to be rendering ESP on the DMA PC, fusing them together as one output and throwing it on your monitor just so that you have ESP. So I got to be honest with you guys, latency with these things is not horrible. Okay, an average of 0.3 milliseconds. You're looking at straight HDMI to DisplayPort or HDMI to HDMI. Generally, these things will support 1080p at 244 hertz. You're looking at 1440p at 120 hertz, and you're looking at 4K at about 60 hertz for a fuser that's gonna resell for roughly $220, $230. You can buy these from factory for about $130. Don't overpay. One of the things I also want to mention as a user experience with fusers, HDMI ports on fusers are so fucking brittle and fragile. My buddy Marshall just got a brand new one delivered to him yesterday from when I'm making this video, and the HDMI port came dead, and before it was sent to him, it was tested and working fine, and it was shipped in a proper package in a proper box. Fusers are so finicky, he probably just has to open it up and resolder something, but at that point, why are you spending hundreds of dollars on something that can break literally just sitting in a box and shipping? What happens if it falls off your desk? I will say though, a fuser is not a bad idea if you are a streamer, because ultimately you don't want to be caught looking at your radar, especially in games like EFT. The EFT community fucking hates cheating streamers. It's actually insane. I do want to note though, I did find something recently in the Captain DMA Discord as I was looking at the posts from Tom, the owner himself. They're currently working on a project with the beta name Cap 4K 120. This fuser apparently is going to allow you to do 4K at 120 hertz, 1440p at 240 hertz, and 1080p at 480 hertz refresh rate. That's nuts, first of all. And also, this is all boasted with a 0.3 millisecond delay. That's nuts. And again, it's in beta phase. I just had to say that. But from fuser to monitor with a 0.3 millisecond delay is pretty nuts for 4K at 120 hertz. They also mentioned something here, and I'm just reading it off to make sure that I get it correctly. They are supporting dual recording for their ESP, which means you can choose to display ESP or not on your recordings through OBS. That's great for someone like me. And they are doing their entire beta test using the brand new Samsung 57-inch G9 5NC, aka the Odyssey G9 57-inch OLED. That thing is boasting 7680 by 2160, a true above 4K ultra wide, a super ultra wide. And apparently they're achieving these results on that monitor with that resolution. That's kind of nuts considering that's above 4K at 120 hertz. Also, I have to mention that this, I'm pretty sure, is the first fuser to support 32 by 9 super ultra wide. And you know, we have one of those, so I might have to check it out if it's not highway robbery. Now, before we go further, I do want to mention fuser alternatives. I spoke about this earlier when we were sitting over in my closet. Whoa, pause. That is going to be a capture card. Now, I would recommend Elgato because I love Elgato as a company. They don't sponsor cheaters. Shout out G Fuel. Use code TABZ on checkout. But it's going to be AverMedia. AverMedia seems to be the best option in terms of response rate for their preview. And you're going to be getting 4K at 120 or 4K at 240 hertz pass through, I think, or 120. Don't take my note on it. Most of you guys aren't using 4K anyways, but they do support 1440p at 240 hertz, which is great. And they have a very, very low, I think they call it a sub millisecond preview. So your preview on OBS will not be sub millisecond. It never is. Even on a USB 3.2 capture card for what I'm using here with this camera, there's still a delay. It's 120 millisecond delay, which is horrible, but they're boasting that sub millisecond delay with their preview in their own software, not OBS. So pretty much what you'll do, I'm going to bring out the whiteboard. So I'm pretty sure I already explained this, but I explained it for capture cards in general, as AverMedia is going to work a little different, but their cards are also cheaper than Elgato. We've got our monitor 1 and our monitor 2. So we're going to go M2, M1, and then we have our gaming PC and our DMA PC. So I'll put a D on that and M on that. We have our AverMedia is going to be installed into the DMA PC. Okay. So what we're going to do is main PC, obviously you're going to have that connected to monitor 1, and then you're also going to have a connection going out to the capture card. Now, if you want to play on your main gaming monitor, which is probably going to be the better spec one, better colors, you're also going to have a display going out to monitor 1 as well. And then you'll be able to switch between the two. But you're going to start the game on monitor 1. You're going to be good to go. What you're then going to do is swap this monitor once the game's open over to the DMA PC, which will also be connected to monitor 2. You are then on monitor 2 going to set up your cheat. And from there, you will open up the AverMedia software to display number 1. You'll full screen the preview. And what you'll do is the cheating software will then draw the overlay of ESP box onto monitor 1 over the preview so that everything lines up, syncs up. And now you're on your gaming monitor 1 with a overview pass through from the DMA PC to that monitor with the overlay drawing. And you're pretty much set from there. We're going to talk about a KM box. This is another add-on that you're going to want to get, and it's going to be the cheapest one, about $20 to $30. Please, for the love of God, do not spend $80 on a KM box. I see them being resold for $80 so much. They're $20. They're $20 to $25 on TabzWare. Please buy them from the motherland of... I'm going to blur that or whatever because I don't know if I can talk about China like that on YouTube. But anyways, we're going to talk about the KM box. So what that means is I'm going to pull this bad boy out really quick. Let's get up and personal with it. Hell yeah. Welcome to KM box land. We got it right here. So this is a KM box. One input going to the gaming PC and one input going to the cheating PC. Now, what this does is essentially mimic and emulate your mouse and keyboard. So mouse and keyboard can be plugged in here. I only do mouse because, I mean, keyboard's kind of useless, but that's what KM stands for, keyboard mouse. This is essentially like an Arduino Leonardo R3. And it basically with a host shield, but much better because this is not going to provide any host identification numbers or serials or anything like that in between the computers. You don't have to worry about that getting detected necessarily. The only time you have to actually upgrade the firmware on these is when they stop working, and generally that just happens with dogshit Windows updates. Okay, well, that's done, and I hope you understand KMBox now. Kind of just emulates your mouse so that you're able to have aimbot from no data writing at all. Again, you can use silent aim and magic bullet in some of these DMA cheats, but again, you are messing with memory at that state. And if you want to stay fully external and not open yourself up to any kind of ban, you're going to want to do read only. Read only will still give you information for writing, but you'll be writing on a fuser / another overlay on a separate PC. And for aim, you'll be using that bad boy right there. All of that goodness is just going to tell your mouse, pull down a little bit, pull to the left. It's simple. I don't really know how else to explain it. It's the cheapest thing, but somehow also the most useful thing for non-writing aimbot. So again, to go over the benefits really quick, you're going to be not passing through any HID descriptors, serials, or other important data to the gaming PC. There's multiple versions of the KM box that I do want to note really quick. There's the KM box B+, which is basically the older version of that one with no screen. There's also the B+ Pro, which is the same as the KM box B+, but with a screen. And then the one that I have is the KM box Net. The Net version basically just comes with everything that the KM box B+ Pro comes with, all in one package. And it's a bit smoother than the previous ones. It's worth a couple extra dollars if you can get a Net. Surprisingly, I ordered a B+ Pro and got a Net. So shout out my TabzWare seller. That guy was fucking cool. I still can't believe some people sell these for 80 bucks. I actually have mine written down here. I think I paid 29 USD after everything. And that includes shipping as well for that, which is not bad. Also, cool thing to note is, yes, it takes firmware upgrades too. Generally, when you buy them, you get information on how to get those. You should not upgrade your firmware. If you plug in your mouse and it works and everything's good, don't touch your firmware. It's better not to. You might brick it. But it does run without software other than the cheat software telling you what to do. You don't need any software for it. Just install the drivers and have a good time. And I do want to say, like I said, the firmwares are also free and public. They're not like DMA cards at all, so you don't have to really worry about like bans or anything like that, nor do you have to pay an observant fucking fee. This last one that I want to talk about really quickly is if you don't want to buy a fuser, you can't afford a fuser, you have some streaming options. I hope to God you have good internet at least. We're going to be talking about the NVIDIA Moonlight API manipulation, as well as Sunshine, and there's a couple other ones, but they're not as common and not as good. So we'll just stick to these ones. I will in future have a guide showing you guys how to set this up, as I do want to make a mini series about everything. So it's easily broken down if you can't sit through this video, how to set up Sunshine, how to set up NVIDIA. The main difference between the Moonlight API and Sunshine is Sunshine uses the Moonlight API, but makes it work with Intel Arc GPUs and AMD RTX or XTX GPUs, or just AMD in general, I believe. To basically explain this, I'm probably gonna have to grab the whiteboard. Fuck it. I promise you this is the last whiteboard, okay? To explain the Moonlight protocol system, gaming PC, DMA PC, these are horrible. So we'll just put G for game and D for DMA. You are going to be using your game stream to send the video over to DMA. It will then send the gameplay information over to here, and you'll start your cheat and make it so that your overlay draws on your monitor rather than a fuser, meaning your ESP shows on the game that's being streamed over to your DMA PC, and you're going to be still playing on your main PC. So you also have the option, if you want to risk it, to plug in your DMA PC into your main monitor. And then once you start the stream, you can turn off the game PC monitor connection, swap it over to the other display port, the other HDMI, and play as if it was all one system. You could do that. It is internet speed dependent. I know that Marshall has gigabit internet and he had some issues with it. I am very fortunate to have 8 gigabit internet, and I did not have a single resolution issue or problem doing this. I just like my graphics, and I own a 4090. If I wanted to stream games, I would not have bought a 4090. I'm taking full advantage of a capture card or fuser. Like, it looks good, but to an extent, like, you realize how much you spent on all this stuff. And if you really want to be stuck to literally making your game just look worse for the sake of having ESP boxes, you should just be using an internal, external cheat, etc. Because it's going to cost you, like, you're going to get banned with that stuff. It's going to cost you over time the same to just buy DMA and buy a fuser, etc. Look at like basic cheats like EFT has ABS for like $6 or $7 a day. Times that by 365, and then look at an EFT cheat that's like $25 a month with an initial upfront cost investment of a DMA card and a fuser. I know you know which one you should pick. It's a hard choice, but you know which one you should pick. We're almost there. We're almost at the end, but given who I am and what my channel's about, you know we have to talk about the cheats. So one of the final steps when it comes to having your DMA set up and all ready to go is figuring out where you are getting the cheats. Now, it's very true, and I want to make this very prevalent. A lot of people are going to pay for cheats, and generally I would too, because I like the fact that I'm supporting the coder that's taking their time to make DMA cheats, as it is pretty true that almost every external can be converted to a DMA cheat, but the code needs to be cleaned up because, as I've stated before, these cards just aren't fast to work with shit code. There will be lag, there will be input issues, there will be refreshing issues on radar, etc. But again, GitHub literally exists. GitHub free cheats for DMA stuff exists. You can go on EFT right now and download a free GitHub radar. I know because I've done it. You can update the offsets quick and then just run it and you have radar. All the images can be found on Google for the maps as well. And I believe the one that we were looking at, high resolution images of the map for the radar, which is kind of great. As long as your firmware is UD, generally DMA cheats on GitHub, as long as there's not server-sided detection flagged like settings, you're pretty much fine. It's kind of ridiculous. But again, that upfront cost has its benefits. Again, with DMA, you got to remember that there's really no bypass when it comes to injecting for the anti-cheat. So free cheats that exist out there are generally going to be safe. Again, you still should probably know what you're doing if you're just grabbing shit off GitHub. Generally, a lot of it is safe, but you never know. Something to consider, though, is if you are looking to cheat in like CS2, for example, GitHub is going to be your best friend. I see cheats going for CS2 for like $40 a month. And the only thing I can think of is like why NEX exists for CS2. It's an external, it's UD, and so far CS2 has done nothing about externals. So yeah, I don't know where some people do this, because like, I'd understand $40 a month if your cheat was also coming with the Faceit firmware, but to spend $600 on the Faceit firmware and then $40 a month on the cheat, I don't know, bro. What the fuck? So there are a lot of legit providers, and I'm not going to name any by name just so that I don't get them targeted harassment or hate from this video from the legits that are definitely watching. Hi, hope you hit the dislike button. But either way, I will have a Discord link down below. It's called Only UD, and they do support like externals, internals, all that. But they're the only Discord that I know that does fact checking and like actual test checking on DMA firmware sellers, hardware sellers, and cheat sellers. So I'll have that down below. You guys can look that up. And also in my Discord, I have an untrusted and trusted providers list now, where people can send me the proof that they've tested things. I will upload stuff on there too. So far, I've reviewed 2 DMA providers on there, and I'm working on 3 more at the moment that I'm just writing. So you can join and look at that. Again, for DMA, you're looking at cheats costing as little as like $8 for a few days sub, all the way to $70 for monthly. One of the ones that I will mention that I just don't understand the price of their cheat for is, let me actually like, this blew my mind when I found this out. Let me Google this really quick. Visuals can be streamed to a second PC, proper visibility check, stealth mouse simulation, instead of memory. $25 for a cheat for CS2 is insane when you consider that rage cheats are that expensive, not external cheats and DMA cheats for a game that has free cheats that are going to probably run better than a DMA. No cap. Like, I'm just being honest. No offense. I probably actually haven't, I've been saying the provider's name, but I'm going to bleep it anyways because some of you will know, but I don't want to cause drama. That's not my intent. The last and final part is who made DMA popular. Now I want to talk about this because the Western side of DMA doesn't hit them. They think they're special. They think only the rich, only the gatekeepers can get into DMA. And honestly, man, it's a little bullshit. And we're going to be honest here. DMA got popularized in China. It's not even the fact that punishment for getting caught cheating in China is way worse than it is for us over here in the West. China is the DMA homeland. The chips there are made on cents on the dollar in large orders, and everything local is always going to be cheaper. You have to look at it like this. You're a tourist going to China, Japan, any country really. You're going to end up being heckled to pay more simply because you're a tourist. It is the exact same way in China when it comes to buying specific products. Stuff there is cheaper generally for reps of products. Technology generally is cheaper there if it's something that's made there and is made in mass quantities. I promise you right now, no one in China is paying over $100 US for a goddamn DMA card. And their firmware is probably also much cheaper. Western society likes to take so much fucking advantage over people when it comes to how much money they can charge them for shit. It's ridiculous. The fact that even the actual factories on Taobao still charge a little bit more over, I respect it. You know what? They sourced it. They bought them in fucking huge stocks. Let them do what they do. But it's definitely cheaper than buying from a reseller. 100%. I'm pretty sure the Captain DMA that I bought is like $300. I mentioned previously, sold by Captain DMA, but yet his factory sells it for $130. And honestly, if people want to keep on saying that DMA is only getting popular over the last 2 years, 3 years, this year, it's not true. DMA has been popular since 2016, 2017. I don't know if many of you guys know this, just maybe not in the Western community, but Youku is the Chinese version of YouTube. You can go on there, and if you get the right Google Translate and enough Googling, you're going to find videos of 2017 PUBG DMA cheating. 2017, please take in how many years ago that was. 7, by the way, if you're still counting on your fingers. I definitely wasn't. So 7 years this has been out. It's been popular, at least in the Chinese market or the Asian market. And honestly, over the last 7 years, it's definitely made a larger escape to this market. But again, it's going to be more expensive here with less people buying. Like, so many people in China use DMA as like just their main concept for cheating. It's quite insane. If you do a deep rabbit hole dive on DMA, you will find that most of the uploads on YouTube are even done by Asian gamers that are using like Translate or like voiceover stuff. It's insane. And honestly, some of those channels are just so fun to turn on and watch, because even though I don't know what the fuck they're saying because Google Translate sucks, just seeing them shit on people in these random Chinese games is fucking cool. I'm going to put something into perspective for you really quick. So where I got my card, I'm going to have it linked, obviously, in my Discord, as I don't want to break any YouTube's terms of service, and I don't think I can link to a marketplace that's Chinese on YouTube. I don't know, just keeping myself safe here. If you look at their stats, they sell over 400 plus DMA cards a month. Their monthly sales statistics, which are public on their Taobao, is 400 plus monthly DMA sales. And that's all they sell, is fusers and DMA and cam boxes. So even if you were to say, okay, well, they sell 3 products, divide that 400 monthly sales by 3, and I guarantee you not everyone's buying a fuser. They're much more popular than people want to admit. And the gatekeeping is fucking insane. So the final note that I want to leave you guys out on with this video is that DMA is not the means to an end to detection risk. You're safest using DMA and KM boxes when it comes to cheating. It's literally probably the safest thing that you can do when it comes to cheating, especially when you consider that new technology coming out with the 75T chips for DMA now have polymorphic emulation that can just change on the dime to not get detected firmware wise. Pretty crazy. I didn't go into that because there's not much info known about it. Right now, the only polymorphic firmware that I'm aware of is $1,200. Kind of steep. Don't care how much money I make on YouTube or advertising anything. You'd never catch me spending that much on a fucking cheat. Again, you want to remember that when it comes to detections, you also have to worry about server-side flags and server-side detection risks. This form of cheating, like I said, is undoubtedly the safest way, if that could even be said. But nothing is ever undetectable, and don't ever be foolish enough to believe that anything is safe. It's my job as a content creator to basically inform everybody and everyone, even if it's about cheating, about things in this community. And I just want to say that realistically, Valorant spent $80 million on their anti-cheat, or Riot did specifically, and it's harder to cheat and face it in comparison to Valorant. But Valorant does get firmware detections quite often. So again, if they're doing it, eventually people will catch up. EAC will catch up. BE will catch up. The more it's used, my video or not, they're going to do it. It's just right now, I personally believe there's so many internals and external cheats on the market for those. They don't have the manpower to be able to keep up with DMA right now. And I feel like they're just going to collect and farm firmwares. And then one day everyone's going to get the fucking... The only way to go forward is to be pushed forward, as you guys know. So if they do update and DMA firmware stuff gets detected really fast, we'll figure out what comes next. Because again, something will come next. That's evolution, baby.
Well, we might have just dropped quality doing this. You guys have been asking for so long. I just said, screw it. I have the house to myself for a few days. And I figured, you guys want it, I'll work on it. We shot everything out, done tonight. I do wish I could have added gameplay, but the sad truth of the matter is the video would just get striked. It happens all the time, and it's not something I'm really wanting the bullshit of dealing with, so we're just simply not adding gameplay. That being said, follow me on TikTok, follow me on Instagram. I post shorts and reels all the time, starting from today, so that the stuff that can't go on YouTube can at least still go on other social medias. So yeah. Anyways, a huge portion of this video was not sponsored. At least the sponsored part that you guys saw at the intro covered the bare minimum. So if you guys want to support me, simply do so by just leaving a like and a comment. No monetary value needed. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you guys like this kind of content, I'm so down to continue to do more. I honestly enjoyed script writing, and I honestly enjoyed getting into something that I've wanted to get into but really didn't have a reason to, and you guys were my reason to get into DMA. So anyways, hell yeah, I'm on zero sleep. It's 7 a.m. I'm about to go take out my fucking prized possession camera, man. My good old Fujifilm X100F. I'm gonna go take that out and do some street photography, grab a coffee, come home, post this, and go to bed. Much love, boys.